The Hornets are now 4-0 in region play and look to continue their success against Gainesville. Here we're getting into our post-game, well, really reaction here over the last few couple Hornets games. It's been an extended break since I've been on an episode here. Apologies. Take care of your health here. Had got in a car accident and everything. But anyways, been a minute since we talked. Since we last talked, we were previewing, I believe, Buford. Man, it's been a minute. Roswell's beaten Westlake handedly. They've beaten Seconder handedly on the road. And over the past 3 games, they've handled, and I mean handled, business against the following opponents in Chattahoochee, Johns Creek, and Lanier. And specifically the Lanier Longhorns. Today we're going to be focusing on that Lanier game that just recently happened this past Friday night here, with the Hornets blanking the Longhorns 57-0. I'm your host, John Schneider, here to bring you all your Hornets sports talk, reactions, highlights, and everything else in between. Let's get right into it, shall we, here. Man, they've really picked up their play since the last time we talked. Hornets did play pretty competitive. If you go back to that Buford game, that was probably the ultimatum test that we've had so far this year for the Hornets. Get pretty competitive towards the end of the half, got it down to 28-21 after getting down 28-7 initially. Then they just kind of lost momentum, and granted, it's kind of sweet thing. Granted, a long lightning delay will do some things to that. You get a little restless here and there, you know. Then you go to Westlake, you get a hard-earned victory there, 50-30 over the Lions, and then you just roll right on through Seconder, your Johns Creeks. I feel so bad for Johns Creek. They have yet to score a single point all season, so it was to be expected of that. For Roswell ended up winning 60-0, and I believe it was like 54-0 by halftime. Then you come back home finally after a long extended time on the road for the Hornets. You beat Chattahoochee in your homecoming game 57-13. Chattahoochee and Johns Creek are kind of really at the bottom of the region. And what you're supposed to do as a quality high school football team like Roswell is you take care of the teams you're supposed to beat. They handily did that basically by a score of 117-13, which is ridiculous, which is nuts. So now we are approaching the end of the season. End of the regular season concludes in 10 days for the Hornets. You've been on the road for a while. You had the Walton game, which was a nice test. Walton's a quality opponent. Same with Buford. Buford's tough because they're one of the top 10 teams in the country. So it is what it is. They're a class above you in Georgia high school football and everything like that. So the fact that there was the competitiveness of the team that I saw in that first half gives me a lot of hope as we end off the regular season here against Gainesville this coming Friday, and then Milton to cap off the year. Yes, we are. It is almost that time, Hornets fans. But since then, you'd been, okay, here we have some lower level opponents that we need to, beat up on, per se. And give all credit to the Chattahoochee Cougars and the Johns Creek Gladiators. And Seconder, which I think Seconder was a closer game than I think the Hornets expected to be. So, credit to all them, and good luck for the rest of the season to them. Now you get to Lanier. To me, this was a game. This was it's a litmus test. Let's just be blunt with it, right? Hornets beat Lanier by 10 the previous year at Lanier, and they've kind of followed a interesting schedule here where they'll have some good quality out of region play games between Peachtree Ridge, your Waltons, your Bufords. I mean, Buford's Buford, right? Your Westlakes. So, and Lanier's kind of that okay, now let's ramp up here to get ready for Gainesville and get ready for Milton, since the region has shifted to this since I believe last year, right? Thought this would be a close, competitive game. Both Roswell and heading into this game, both Roswell and Lanier were ranked inside the top 20 for a. Roswell was number 5. Lanier was 21. Lanier's a good team. They put up 30 on Gainesville, but here's where it gets the what the hey moment. Roswell proceeded to blank the Lanier Longhorns 57-0. A team that has much talent as the Lanier Longhorns going into this Gainesville matchup and then ultimately Milton. And we'll get into our Gainesville preview later down the road this week. Blanking the Lanier Longhorns is nothing short of... One, it surprised me, because I thought the Hornets would have a relatively comfortable win, but they'd be tested physically. And I think you saw that at the beginning of the game where the Longhorns had the Hornets beat down the field a couple times, but they just missed their opportunities to jump ahead. Where you point to the first 2 plays of the game, Lanier could have easily had 2 touchdowns. From that point on, the Hornets flipped the switch to the point where the defense was incredible. Just got after Longhorns quarterback. Excuse me, I'm forgetting the name, but he had a solid game as well. But the Hornets defense just took over the game. Same with Trey Smith. Trey Smith is, if he wasn't already, he's a top 5 quarterback in the state of Georgia. It's plain and simple. The dude had 6 total touchdowns himself against this game, and it was just like, here comes another one, here comes another one, here comes another one. Roswell, the Hornets got whatever they wanted on offense. Once it got to halftime when the Hornets were up 22-0, Lanier just kind of stepped off the gas a little bit, and the Hornets just throttled them the rest of the way. Nick Peel is now 5 touchdowns away from the Hornets' all-time record, and for rushing touchdowns in the season, which hopefully he gets in between. Which if he does get that in between Gainesville and Milton, I think the Hornets win the region ultimately, which is really good. But no, the way the game started off, you had your queasy feeling in your stomach like, oh, this might be one of these games where there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the Longhorns to get theirs, but you're kind of just holding your breath whether or not like they're going to hit those shots. I think missed opportunities for the Longhorns, and the way that the overall game adjustments by Coach Thompson throughout the rest of this game, which he's shown throughout this entire year that he's a great in-game adjusting coach. And like there's a lot of risks taken too. I think pulling those out in a game like this, where it's kind of maybe just gives Gainesville a little extra to think about, particularly here in the fake punt on 4th and 10 that Tyler Presnall just trucked three guys to get a first down. You're looking at the flea flicker from that Drake Cousy hit Sean Smith with. So I like the risk taking. I think the Hornets' stable of running backs is in a really, really, really good spot here. DJ Cousy is going to be amazing, and I think that was shown towards the end here. The Longhorns still, to my knowledge, still had their starters in, and he was just running around. I don't know if y'all have ever seen Return of the Jedi, right? And Yoda's training Luke or whatever, or no, excuse me, Revenge of the Sith, where he's just hopping around, fighting. Eventually what becomes Emperor Palpatine, right? He's just hopping around. He's impossible to get. To me, that was DJ Cousy. Hopped around. He's going to be a dog. His brother's already a dog. Dre. The physicality the Hornets have displayed and taking care of business over the past 3 games between Johns Creek, Chattahoochee, and especially Lanier. I can point to many points in time where the pressure from the Hornets defensive line on a really solid Longhorns O-line who has a couple commits to pretty well-respected colleges. To me, that impressed me the most, the way the Hornets have been displaying their physicality over the past few games, and hopefully that should continue against Gainesville. Granted, Gainesville's number 1 team in 5A. There's no secret about that. Their only loss to come to Carrollton, and they still played really well against Carrollton. Carrollton's their own thing, right? Carrollton, Buford, and Grayson are like in their own class themselves, right? But make no mistake about it here. The Hornets continue to dominate physically, mentally. They're very sharp. There is some learning moments, if you want to point to this game, from just kind of some mental errors. Trey Smith had some questionable balls thrown, but hey, it all got worked out. I mean, dude, when you score have 6 combined touchdowns and get a 2-point conversion, dude, you're good, man, and you're honestly, in my opinion, the top 3 quarterback in the state, just with a dual threat ability. The dude accounted for almost 400 yards of offense, y'all. Yeah. So, Willis Campbell continues to be a great factor. Sean Smith, great blocking. Want to give him some props because he was blocking his butt off all night. As well as the offensive line, Smith has rarely been under a lot of pressure all season, except for Buford, which granted Buford's got several Texas A&M commits on their defense, and they're just Buford, right? Kudos to this offensive line. Defensive line continues to get after it. Brody Duffy, not Ryder Duffy, excuse me. He continues to be a monster. Since we last talked, the Hornets have lost Hayes Kennerly, who's having a great season. But I think the way the rest of this linebacking core has stepped up has been really nice. And just the edge in general. You're pointing to Sekou Smith, Josh Emerson, Elijah Niston, Boleen has been pretty good. as well. Especially Josh Anderson's had himself a hell of the last 4 games. Anyone who looked at the back end, Caden Perry and Ian Faust continue to be great. Now, we will get the DBs, including your Trey Harris's. Your Christian English did have a scare there before halftime. Christian English went down, but he should be fine now, I think. We did have, towards the end of the game, just kind of a weird, like, what the hey was that, where Daniel Battershell got eventually ejected, and he will be suspended for the last 2 games of the season, which hurts the Hornets' DB depth, but they should be fine. I'm confident in the rest of this DB room here. But defense is playing well. Coach Cumberland's got this defensive line eating. They constantly point to at least minimum 4 sacks a game, it seems like. So yeah, I mean, there's much other to say. It was just a complete domination by the Hornets on their part, and Lanier, despite their best efforts, the Hornets ran the ball down their throat. Nick Peel had a really great game, 14 touches for over 100+ yards. Trey Smith had 182 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns. When it came down to short yard situations, the Hornets were able to convert and get the things that they needed. There was some similar snaps, like a high snap that could have led to a balanced Rose Marty field goal towards the end there, but I mean, I think it was just a high snap and Mirabella couldn't get it down fully. But that's all right. I mean, mistakes are going to happen, right? It's high school football. Nobody's a pro here. No one's perfect, right? And this even happens in the NFL. Granted, in the NFL, you should be pretty consistent. You should always be able to hold a snap, right? Unless the snap just goes high. I mean, even then, it still happens there. So it's all right. It is all right. 57-0 was your final score at the Nest for the Hornets' second to last home game of the season. Looking ahead now to Gainesville, this will pose the Hornets' toughest task since Buford, in my opinion. Probably this, I guess, if you want to go by max prep standards, they're the second highest ranked team on Roswell's schedule and how they've scaled their play throughout the rest of the season. They've beaten Milton by a couple scores. They just obliterated Chattahoochee, which, I mean, unfortunately for Chattahoochee, that's just kind of the way ball's going right now for them. But it's at Gainesville. Last year, if you remember what happened, Hornets fan, this game will be on 680 The Fan, so tune into that. That is the home of, if you all listen to Braves baseball or listen to it on the radio, that is that radio station. And they also carry, I think, Georgia football and Georgia Tech football as well. So that'll be on 680 The Fan, and then correct me if I'm wrong, either Milton or still Gainesville might be on GPB. As the Georgia game of the week, which Roswell's played in one already. So I thought they played extremely well in the Buford game when they needed to crawl out of that hole and make it a game and force Buford's hand, which makes me feel pretty confident. Especially with that Walton game in the earlier year. Yeah, I kind of lost the lead there, but you still were able to be clutch and come back and win. And if you listen to the show, dude, like, personally, I'm under the opinion that you're the best kicker in the state of Georgia, and possibly even the country. So you have a clutch kicker, you have a clutch quarterback that steps up when he needs to make the plays in those nut crunch time moments. Same with Nick Peel, same with Drake Kuzi, same with Willis Campbell. I feel very confident. Granted, you're gonna have to. We'll get into more of this in the Gainesville preview later on this week, but it should be an interesting game. We will be out there, so continue to check out Inside the Nest on YouTube, where we'll be posting highlights, your post-game recaps from whatever stadium the Hornets are playing at, which seems to be a different one every week. But luckily now we're at the friendly confines of Raymond Manning Stadium. So that'll be all for today's episode. For John Schneider and Inside the Nest, so long, everyone. If you want to continue to check out Inside the Nest and all that we have, we will be having more player interviews towards the season, end of the season that we'll be pushing out, and obviously we'll continue to provide you all the coverage for Hornet sports. Look out for a softball episode later out on this week with the Hornets being in the Sweet 16 of the softball playoffs as they look to wrap up the season with hopefully a state title. We'll see how that goes, but again, go Hornets. And yeah, so rest of the episode's planned out for this week. We got a softball episode coming out soon, as well as some interviews with quarterback Trey Smith, kicker Rose Marty, and obviously our Gainesville preview and reactions and recaps. And you can get all of that on the Inside the Nest YouTube and at Inside the Nest on Spotify. So continue to listen, check us out. And if you like the show, tell your friends and family, share with all your Hornets fans and Hornets and throughout the school and faculty and all that good stuff. Everyone enjoy the rest of your day, and go Hornets.